Geesh. No, but I get people, and I'd like to think I get you especially. Dean pulled me closer and hugged me. Your dad made this mess all on his own. He let his pride and bigotry get in the way of doing what was best for his pack. You have no responsibility to fixing it. That's what would make it very noble if you decide to rescue your pack and dad. But what kind of person would it make me? They betrayed me, and the first time they call, I come running. I don't ever want to be used again, I said, admitted part of what was bothering me. I never again wanted to be a tool for my father to use and throw away. It would make you a pretty damn good person, Dean replied. Not many people would help after something like that happened to them. This doesn't have to mean you're being used, Nick. You can set conditions and rules if you want. Rules and conditions. Of course, like a trade, I guess. I grinned and hugged Dean. Thank you, Dean. Again, I don't know what I'd do without you. I know I'm awesome. God's gift to mankind, he said with a sigh. I laughed and poked him in the side. Easy there, mister. Your neck might snap if you let it get too big. Oh, you think, he said, putting a mocked expression of fear. Yep, like a twig. I sighed and hugged him again. So what to do? 24-25. This is crazy, Marquis demanded, and if I doubted his words, he gave me the look of bewildered horror. Your father will never agree to this. Then that's his choice, but if he wants my help, he's going to have to agree to those terms. I will not save his ass just to have it all fall apart at the next turn. What happened to father's dignity? He scowled at me, but took out his cell and tapped the screen. Alpha, Marquis said with a much softer voice when the call connected. She's agreed to help, but with conditions. Yes, sir, I told her the pack was at risk. Yes, she still insisted. Marquis glared at me for good measure, and I replied with a grin. The first condition is Brandon will never be allowed to become Alpha, no matter what happens in the future, and secondly, I took the phone from Marquis. You either join the 21st century, join Harry Ford's Better Pack Project, or keep your own bigoted mindset and forget you ever had a daughter. If you accept, I'll want it in a written contract. I tossed the phone back to him. He's all yours. Marquis put away his phone and shook his head. He agreed to the first, but the second he wants to discuss with you in person. How soon can you leave? I need to make arrangements, obviously, but I think I'll be ready to leave in the morning. Good, don't be late, he said, and stalked out of the room. Whatever, I said, shaking my head, and left to tell the others. They took the news about as well as I expected. John was frustrated. He didn't understand why I needed to go. Thankfully, he didn't push me to explain, but it might have been Dean's presence. Dean and I sat on the couch of the empty living room, our hands clasped and fingers laced. I want you to go with me, I told him after a moment. I'm kind of nervous about going back. Why, I thought you'd be excited, he replied. I took a breath and let it out. I am, but what if I get there and Father steamrolls me? What if I forget everything that's happened here? I know if you're there, none of it will happen. I think you give me entirely too much credit, he replied, laughing. No, I don't. So will you go? Dean hummed, tapping his chin with his finger, and I punched him in the shoulder. Oh, he cried out, rubbing his shoulder with a pout. Well, if you're going to be mean about it. Dean! He laughed and slung an arm around my shoulders. Nick, seriously, do you think I'd let you leave without me? Wait, let me. Dean, just say yes, you'll go and shut up, I teased him. Oh, bossy me like he teased me right back. I rolled my eyes. I swear you were something else. I know, right? He hugged me to him. Again, I shook my head and stood. I wanted to leave tomorrow, but I'm still not entirely sure how we're going to get there. I have exactly no money. Hey, I'm sure Dad can help you out there, Dean said, standing as well. I'm starting to owe your father a lot, I replied, a little worried that was going to bite me in the ass one day. Don't worry, Dean said, as if he could read my thoughts. It's all going to be cool. You're part of the family now, anyway. Come on, let's head to the gym, and I'll spot for you. I still wasn't convinced owning his father anything wouldn't end up having huge strings, but I nodded and followed him to the gym. Dean was right. Alpha Brent lent us one of his jets to travel to Kansas. It was a nice trip and quick. We were back in Golden Plains before noon. Father and a few other enforcers waited for us as we got off the plane. You seem to be doing well for yourself, Father said with a sniff, looking from the others up to the plane and back. Hello, Father, and yes, I've been managing. It was you, after all, who taught me never to let adversity take me down. Strange, I was beginning to wonder if you'd learned anything from me at all, Father replied with yet another sniff. He didn't even bother to hide the contempt on his face. What is this nonsense about a Better Pack project that you were trying to hold over my head? Have you gone insane, girl? Exactly as the name implies. It's a project to create better pack life. One where women can hold any position a man can, or intelligence matters equally, if not more, than pure strength. For example, you wouldn't have to fear for your pack because you're getting old and have a bad knee. Father worked his jaw as if he was trying to eat a piece of particularly tough meat. Absurd, that's now how the world works. It could be, I replied. No, it couldn't. It's a foolish dream of those too weak to rule. I will not allow such ideas to taint and ruin my pack. I shrugged. Suit yourself, but in doing so, as per my request. We're done after I do this for you. When I finish, you no longer will have a daughter. You don't mean that? You wanted to be the alpha of this pack too much for too long to just give up now. I forced a smile on my face as I did my best to look down at him. Oh, but I do, and I'm not giving up. Just moving on. Father narrowed his eyes at me. You ungrateful bitch. After everything I did for you. He took a step towards me, but before I could do anything, Dean shoved him back. Seriously, you calling her ungrateful? She's here saving your ass after you ditched her, Dean said, glaring at him. He looked almost furious. If anyone is ungrateful, it is you, you old asinine dick. How dare you? This is my territory. I am alpha, Father shouted at him. Dean snorted, crossing his arms over his chest. Are you? Are you really? I stepped in between the two before a fight could break out. Okay, enough, I said, holding up my hands to stop them. We've got one challenge to deal with. I don't think we need another. If you will sign the contract stating you agree to my terms, Father, we can get started. Father worked his jaw again, glaring at all of this. A bunch of ungrateful, he muttered, but took the papers Wesley offered him and signed them messily. Great, now let's go inside, and you tell me about this alpha who's challenging you. 25-26. Dean Antoine Bell is our challenger, the man, Marquis said as we sat around a large oval table. The name sounded familiar to me, but I couldn't place where I'd heard it. He's been in the country for 10 years, and we're not sure what exactly brought him to this country. He's been living down in Louisiana. It hit me. I knew who Antoine Bell was and that he was challenging Nick's father couldn't be an accident. Did he come with someone, I asked. Everyone turned to look at me confused. What does that matter? Marquis demanded. Answer the question, Nick said, though I could tell she was as confused as the rest. A woman, Widosa. Where are they now? Marquis Guy scowled. They're staying at the hotel on the edge of our territory. Juan Nick held up a hand. What's going on? Not sure yet. I'd have to talk to Bell's mate, I replied. Why, she asked, and I swear she almost sounded jealous. I grinned at her, took her hand in mine. To see if I'm right, of course, I said, squeezed it, then stood. I'll be back soon. It has to be now, Wes asked, frowning at me. Yeah, I think it might have to do with why we're here. Then I'm going with you, Nick said, standing as well. Marquis started to object, and she practically snarled at him. I don't need the guy's biography. Meeting him in person is going to give me more information I need than what is his name or where he comes from. Are you sure that's safe? Wes said, now looking worried. If he's got half a brain, yes, she replied. It'd be stupid to do anything to jeopardize his right to challenge. Come on, Dean. We left the office and went outside. John got a car for us, and we all piled in. So what's going on? He asked as we drove. You know my history with Black Mountain and Reich. John and Nick nodded. You think this has something to do with Mike and what happened before? She asked. I don't know, but I find it odd that your challenger has made it to my cousin and Mike's sister, Beth, I said. She holds a grudge against your family, John asked. I didn't think so, but now I don't know. Beth was more than a bit of a bitch, especially to Brooke. When my uncle died, she stayed with us until she met her mate, then moved to Louisiana. I thought she was happy there. Yet here she is challenging my old pack. Nick finished for me. It could be a coincidence, but I have to know for sure, I replied. Agreed, Nick said, leaning in her seat. At the hotel, the receptionist called up to the room to announce us, and to my surprise, we were given the okay to go up. I hoped that was a good sign. I hadn't seen Beth in years, and I didn't want her to be a superficial bitch like she used to be. I knocked on the door, and sure enough, Beth opened the door. Her blonde hair was in a mass of curls, and she looked like she'd put on a few pounds. Her bright eyes widened when she saw me. Dean, she said, practically squealing and throwing herself on me and hugging me. I didn't know you were in Kansas. Okay, kind of weird, but a good weird. I just got here, I said, then took Nick's hand and pulled her forward. I came with my mate Nick, whose old pack yours is trying to take over. The smile that started to spread on her glossy lips froze, and her eyes widened again as she looked at me. What is your mate challenging the alpha of Golden Plains to try and hurt me and through me, Dean? And Nick said it bluntly. It wasn't how I was planning on breaching the subject, but it was done, and I couldn't help feel a sliver of pleasure that she was angry on my behalf. Usually, people were angry at me, not for me. What? Beth repeated, her eyes wide. She glanced between us, then to me. Do you think I'd do something like that? I don't know, Beth. You have to admit it wouldn't be that far-fetched. I mean, you're the one who told your dad we had broke and sparked the war into happening, I replied. Her pale complexion paled even more. You knew about that, but Uncle Brent never. I shrugged. Dad didn't blame you for it. Alpha Ryan was your dad, after all. Now, seriously, what gives? I think you should come in, she said, opening the door wide. Dean, for as much as it's worth, I promise this isn't some plan to hurt you. Quite honestly, I don't even want to be here. What do you mean? Nick asked, glancing around the room. Beth took a seat in one of the chairs. I was just fine in New Orleans, she said with a hint of bitterness. So then why are you here? I asked her, taking a seat as well. Antoine, she replied. We're expecting. A bright smile spread across her face. And suddenly being chief enforcer for our pack wasn't good enough for him. I wasn't safe enough under another alpha. Beth rolled her eyes. He became obsessed with finding a pack to become alpha. He's convinced it's the only way the baby will be safe. I can't tell you if his reasons for choosing this pack was because he knew we were family or not. At that moment, the door opened and her mate walked in. He looked formidable, to say the least. His eyes narrowed at us when he saw us. Beth got up from the chair. Look who came to visit. It's my cousin, Dean. Some of the tension leaked from the massive man, but he still eyed us with suspicion. But you may have already known that, Beth said, her toe tapping. Antoine, did you choose this pack because the alpha's sister has mated to Dean? Is this some kind of misguided revenge plot of yours? She demanded, just as blunt as Nick apparently. He frowned, looking as surprised as Beth was when Nick had asked her. No, he replied, his voice a deep rumble. I chose the pack because it's weak. His eyes narrowed at us again, especially Nick. I know your brother has shown himself a coward and your father weak. Have you come threatening my mate for me to resent the challenge? Instinct kicked in, but Nick spoke up first. I would never threaten your mate. The only coward in my family is Brandon, and I don't want you to resent the challenge. You don't? Antoine looked surprised and confused by that one. Nope, seeing you now, I think we're going to have one hell of a fight. He repeated, looking even more confused. Yes, Nick is accepting the challenge in her father's name, I said, putting on a smug tone, but I was a little worried. This guy was built like a bull and looked like he had the strength of one too. You, Antoine said in a flat tone. You're a woman. So, Nick said, looking up at him in a challenge. I do not fight women, he shot back with a look of disgust. Why are you afraid you might lose? Are you delusional? He demanded. Nick shrugged. Perhaps, but that's the way this challenge is going to go. You're against me. Don't like it, you are free to rescind. I'm sure your mate here will be the happier for it. I am not rescinding, he demanded. Then it looks like you're going to fight a woman, I jumped in, smirking at him. He scowled at me. Why aren't you taking the challenge if she's your mate? Why should I when she'd do better than me? Antoine frowned, and Beth spoke up. We don't have to do this. We can just go home now. He shook his head slowly. No, this will be our home. We'll see, Nick said, looking smug. However, I would like to put down some conditions. Of course, he said, rolling his eyes, then grunted when Beth slapped his arm. No death match here. We fight to the best of our ability. If one of us is knocked unconscious, pinned, or hurt in a way they can't safely continue, the match is over, Nick said. You have a kid on the way, and this isn't worth my life. Also, we can be civilized about this, right? Yes, Antoine said, though he sounded a bit begrudging. If you win, I'd like you to set something up for my father. He's not a bad man, and I think he wouldn't cause you trouble once he realizes you'll keep his people safe. And if you win, he asked. She grinned. I get bragging rights